Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. You know how this works. You send us the sources, and we dive deep, bringing you the most fascinating insights.
Exactly.
And today, we're taking on a topic that's sure to spark some serious curiosity: biblical mysteries.
Oh, I love this.
We got a ton of requests to tackle this one after a viewer sent in this YouTube video that explores 21 unsolved biblical mysteries.
21. Wow. Okay, so where do we even begin with that many?
Well, I figured we could start with some of the most, well, I guess tangible mysteries. You know, those creatures described in the Bible that have captivated imaginations for centuries.
Yes. Like the Behemoth.
Right, the Behemoth. The video kicks things off with this incredible creature from the book of Job, this being of immense strength and power.
With a tail like a cedar tree. I mean, come on, that's an image that sticks with you.
Doesn't it? Do you think the author of Job was trying to describe something they genuinely believed existed? Or was it more of a poetic device?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, some scholars do believe the behemoth could be a dinosaur, but I tend to think it's more likely a form of hyperbole, like a way to emphasize God's power by creating this creature that's so powerful and awe-inspiring that it defies normal description.
That makes sense, especially when you consider the cultural context. The world must have felt full of mysterious and powerful forces back then.
Absolutely.
And speaking of powerful, the video also delves into the Leviathan.
Oh, yeah, the Leviathan. Now, that's a creature straight out of a nightmare.
Right. It's described as this monstrous, fire-breathing sea serpent of incredible size.
You've got interpretations ranging from, well, a giant sea serpent to a whale or even a demonic figure.
It really does highlight how ancient people use these mythical creatures to try and explain the unknown, maybe even personify chaos.
Exactly.
But it's not just these larger-than-life creatures, right? The video also talks about the Nephilim, those beings that are often depicted as giants.
The Nephilim, yes. The offspring of angels and human women, at least according to some interpretations.
And there's that story, the one where the spies are sent into Canaan, and they're so intimidated by the giants there that they describe themselves as feeling like grasshoppers in comparison. Can you imagine?
Talk about a size difference, right? It makes you wonder, were these stories based on real-life encounters with unusually tall individuals, or were they purely mythical?
Maybe a bit of both. I mean, who knows? But let's move on from creatures, shall we? Video also digs into missing information and lost locations. And one of the biggest mysteries it tackles is the name of God.
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, how can something so fundamental be shrouded in so much mystery?
It really is. We've got the Tetragrammaton, those 4 Hebrew letters, but the exact pronunciation and meaning have been lost to time.
And then you have all these different interpretations, right? Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah, each one reflecting how different cultures and religions approach this divine mystery.
It really does highlight the complexity of trying to define something so vast and powerful.
Yeah.
Another lost item that really intrigued me was the city of Ofir. The video describes it as this source of immense wealth for King Solomon.
Oh, right. But where was Ofir? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
No one seems to know for sure. The video throws out a bunch of possibilities, though. Yemen, East Africa, India, even Peru. They're all based on, ancient trade routes and archaeological findings.
Oh, wow. It's like a real-life treasure hunt.
It really is. Speaking of lost treasures, did you know that there are actually books referenced in the Bible that are missing?
Wait, really?
Yeah. The Bible we have today is missing at least 17 books. I mean, can you imagine what kind of insights we might gain from reading, say, the Chronicles of Nathan and Gad, or the Book of the Wars of the Lord?
It's like finding out your favorite book series is missing a few crucial chapters.
Exactly. You're left wondering what happened and what secrets they might hold. And then, of course, there's the mother of all lost locations, the Garden of Eden.
The ultimate paradise lost.
The video mentions the 4 rivers, including the Tigris and Euphrates, which we know today. Those are our clues. But even with that, pinpointing the exact location of Eden, it's a challenge.
And is it even a real place? Or just a symbol for something else? A pre-fall world?
Maybe both. I don't know. It's a question that has fascinated people for centuries.
Yeah.
And from a lost garden to a lost artifact, how about we talk about the Ark of the Covenant for a minute?
Oh, the Ark. Yeah, that's a good one. Built by Moses to hold the 10 Commandments. I mean, it doesn't get much more sacred than that.
And the Bible details its journey. But then, after the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem, its fate is a complete mystery.
Right. Was it destroyed, hidden, or just lost to time? So many theories.
I know. It's like a real-life Indiana Jones adventure.
I love it. And speaking of groups whose fate is a bit unclear, the video also brings up the lost tribes of Israel.
Right, the 10 tribes exiled by the Assyrians.
Yeah.
Vanished from history.
It's so intriguing that you have all these diverse groups around the world, from Iran to Ethiopia to Nigeria, claiming descent from these lost tribes. Could any of them be true?
It's like a giant puzzle waiting to be solved.
Right. I mean, are there remnants of these lost tribes out there carrying a piece of history that we just haven't uncovered yet?
It's amazing to think about. But, we've talked a lot about these, like external mysteries.
Yeah.
Creatures, locations, missing texts. What about those mysteries that revolve around things that happened within the Bible itself? Disputed events and identities, things like that. And a big one the video tackles is the year of Jesus' birth.
Oh, right. The whole debate about how the Gospel of Luke's account doesn't exactly line up with what we know from historical records.
Yeah, we've got the death of King Herod, the census conducted by Quirinius. It just doesn't all perfectly match up. So the exact year of Jesus' birth up for debate.
Even the location of the crucifixion, it's generally accepted that it happened at Golgotha, but the precise spot, still a bit of a mystery.
The video mentions the Church of the Holy Sepulchre as a possible site, but even that's just based on tradition and guesswork. It's kind of mind-blowing to think that an event so central to history still carries so much mystery.
It really is. And here's another one that I found fascinating the Witch of Endor. The one King Saul consults to summon the spirit of Samuel. Her name isn't even mentioned in the Bible.
Oh yeah, it's like this woman who plays such a crucial role in a key biblical narrative just remains completely anonymous.
Right. I mean, was it intentional or just a reflection of how stories were told back then? Who knows?
And speaking of anonymous figures, we can't forget about the Pharaoh of the Exodus.
The Bible never explicitly names him, does it?
Nope. It just leaves us with clues and interpretations. Some scholars say it was Ramses II. Others argue for Tutankhamun. It's like a historical whodunit.
And then, of course, you have the ultimate symbol of mystery, the Holy Grail.
Ah, yes. The cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper. What is it, really? A literal cup? Or a metaphor? Where is it? So many questions.
I know. It's an object that has captured the imaginations of people for centuries. And it really blurs the lines between history, mythology, and spirituality.
It really does. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to these biblical mysteries. So many mysteries to unpack. I feel like we could spend hours on it, just the ones we've already touched on. But this video covers so much more.
Oh, it does. And it's not just these external mysteries, right? Like those creatures and lost cities and stuff. It also gets into some of the unanswered questions that surround the lives of biblical figures themselves. Like how some of them are said to have lived for hundreds and hundreds of years.
You're talking about Methuselah, right? The guy who supposedly lived to be 969 years old. That's like almost a millennium. Were people really living that long back then?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's a question that's puzzled people for ages. I mean, some interpretations take those ages literally. Others say, well, maybe they represent lunar cycles or something. Or maybe they're just symbolic, like ways to emphasize the wisdom and stature of these figures.
Yeah, maybe a year wasn't quite the same back then, right? Like maybe it wasn't equivalent to what we consider a year to be now. It's fascinating to think about how ancient cultures might have perceived time and longevity.
It really is. And it kind of reminds us that we need to be careful about interpreting these texts through a modern lens. I mean, their understanding of time might have been completely different from ours.
It makes you wonder about all the things we might be misinterpreting, right? Just because we're looking at it from our own cultural perspective.
Exactly. It's a good reminder to stay open to different interpretations.
Totally. And speaking of mysteries surrounding biblical figures, what about those lost years of Jesus? The video touches on that too.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Like the Bible gives us pretty detailed accounts of his birth and then, bam, fast forward to his ministry. But what about all those years in between? What was he up to?
It's like a whole chapter missing from the most famous biography of all time. Was he just chilling in Nazareth, learning carpentry and preparing for, his big debut?
Well, some people think so, but then you have these other theories, the ones that say he might have traveled to all these far-off places, Egypt, India, even Britain. Like, imagine.
Jesus hanging out with Egyptian priests?
Yeah.
Maybe learning about their ancient wisdom or debating philosophy with Indian scholars. That would be incredible. And it would definitely challenge our traditional view of him.
Right. It adds a whole new dimension to his story. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, what kind of impact might those experiences have had on his later teachings?
So many possibilities. And speaking of questions that challenge our traditional views, the video also brings up the whole, was Jesus married debate. That's always a hot topic.
It is, and I thought the video handled it really well. It acknowledges that there's no direct evidence in the Bible to say one way or the other, but it also highlights his close relationship with Mary Magdalene, which has led to, speculation.
Yeah, Mary Magdalene. She's such an interesting character, and the fact that we don't have a clear picture of their relationship just adds to the mystery.
Right, like was she just a devoted follower? Or was there something more there? We might never know for sure.
It's interesting to think about how those unanswered questions allow us to engage with these stories on a different level. They make us think critically and consider all these alternative possibilities.
Absolutely. And it's not just about filling in the blanks. It's about recognizing that these mysteries are part of what makes these stories so enduring. They keep us asking questions, keep us exploring, and keep us engaged with these texts in new and meaningful ways.
Totally agree. And speaking of mysteries that have captivated humanity for centuries, we can't wrap up this deep dive without talking about the end of the world, right?
The apocalypse. I mean, it's a topic that has inspired countless books, movies, and, real-life anxieties. Remember Y2K?
Oh, man. I was a kid back then, but I remember everyone freaking out about computers crashing and the world descending into chaos. It's amazing how the idea of the end times can really tap into those deep-seated fears we have about the unknown.
Yeah, it's a powerful concept. But, as the video points out, the Bible might talk about an end times scenario, but it never gives us a specific date or anything like that.
So no need to start stockpiling canned goods and building an underground bunker just yet.
Exactly. And all those attempts throughout history to predict the end of the world, they've all failed. So maybe instead of worrying about when and how it's all going to end, we should just focus on living meaningful lives in the present.
Sounds like a good plan to me. And honestly, maybe that's part of the message of these end times anyway, right?
Yeah.
To live a good life, be prepared, but not obsess over something we can't control.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway.
Wow, we covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From mysterious creatures like the Behemoth and the Leviathan, to those thought-provoking questions about Jesus' life and even the end of the world, it's incredible how much there is to explore in these ancient texts.
Yeah, and what I find really fascinating is that even though these stories are thousands of years old, they still resonate with us today. Like, people are still trying to find the Garden of Eden and the Ark of the Covenant, and they're still debating whether Jesus was Mary or what those lost years were all about.
It's like those mysteries tap into something fundamental about human nature, that desire to make sense of the world around us, to find answers to the big questions, the ones that have been bugging us since, probably the dawn of time.
Right, and I think that's part of why biblical mysteries continue to capture our imaginations. They offer us a glimpse into how people in the past grappled with those same questions. They give us a window into their beliefs, their fears, their hopes, and their dreams.
Yeah, and even if we never find definitive answers to some of these mysteries, the process of exploring them can be incredibly rewarding. It pushes us to think critically, to question our assumptions, and to consider different perspectives.
And I think that's really important, especially in today's world where it's so easy to get caught up in our own little bubbles and echo chambers. These biblical mysteries remind us that there are multiple ways of looking at things, and that it's okay to embrace uncertainty and ambiguity.
Absolutely. And as much as I love a good historical debate, I think there's also something to be said for simply appreciating the beauty and power of these stories.
Yeah.
Even without concrete answers, they can still inspire us, challenge us, and connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
Right. It's about the journey, not just the destination.
So well said. This deep dive has definitely left me with a renewed sense of wonder and a thirst to keep exploring. And to all our listeners out there, I encourage you to do the same. Keep digging, keep questioning, and keep that spirit of curiosity alive. You never know what amazing insights you might uncover along the way.
Happy exploring, everyone!